welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling, the after party. It is October, and we are talking about Gem DeMilo today, who I have never met in person, but I have seen around the interwebs, and we've contacted each other that way, and it was cool to hear more about her life.
Hi, I'm Emily Foster. I am the producer when We're Not Hustling. Quick reminder to like, subscribe, comment, share, do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I am Milk Glass with one S, a sex worker and kink practitioner in the Pittsburgh area, and I'm very happy to be here.
Great. I really like Jem's episode because I feel like Jem talked about being a single woman and being an intentionally single woman after leaving some relationships and or after, going through some relationships and then deciding that she wanted to stop focusing on being in relationships and start focusing on her life. And that was really interesting to me, but also because it brought up so many things about like societal expectations. We talked a lot about like polyculture and how she's relating to that. And also to me, one of the things that I really liked about it was the focus on like the importance of friendship. And I thought that was like really, really beautiful in a culture where we tend to focus on like romantic relationships as being like the end all of like relationship goals.
Yeah, I always find those themes interesting, and I can kind of see in her what I experience myself is like I am poly, where she is single, and I do have multiple partners, but also I romanticize my friendships. I
Hmm.
just like to romanticize my life in general and my interactions with people. And like I experience love and care and support in like the most what people would just be like, oh, this is just my friend. I'm like, friends are amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I find that my friend group is small, but I think part of that is that I do care a lot about like I consider them to be like I was saying in the episode that when my partner and I, were in couples count, well, we're still in counseling, but like not because it's bad, but because it's great to learn more about your partner. But like
Shout
in
out to counseling when you feel good.
Uh, um, in the context of that, when we were talking about like relationship structures, when the therapist asked me like, "Oh, do you have other partners?" I'm like, "No, but I have a best friend." And that to me felt relevant, actually. Like,
Yeah, no, it very much is though. Like, okay, so like America's kind of weird in the, I think Europe does this too, but like we've got this idea that you find one person, and
mhm,
not only is that the one person that you ever have sex with,
yeah.
that's also your one friend, your one confidant, your one financial advisor, it's like everything. And not all cultures do that, right? But like I know people who went into poly because their friendships, the woman's friendship, this couple who remained beautiful and nameless, her friendships were really hard for him. And he made intimacy only through sex. Which is really common for men. Men are not taught to touch and hug and share and all that shit. And he's like, well, why do I get cut off from my other people and you don't? And that actually
Hmm.
opened her eyes where she was like, oh shit. I didn't realize how much I got from having this emotional bond with these people that covers everything but sex. And you need sex or want sex to open the door to that or to be a part of that or whatever. And even consider those, because of this narrative that we're given. And as soon as that was presented, it wasn't like a retaliatory thing. It was more just like, I also want intimacy with other people, but
Is that like men do that because like I feel like there's a way that like um we could tell that story about that particular person's like proclivities or whatever, but it's a structural issue. I feel like men
yeah,
allowed to actually have intimate relationship. They're not allowed to within like mono heteronormativity to like talk to women about in any sort of intimate way, which includes just about anything besides about anything, really.
Anything? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
men like, through masculine socialization are just like so cut off from their emotions and anything. So the only people that many men I think end up having close relationships with are the people they're having sex with, which means for a lot of men, they got one person and it's very lonely. And we're talking about like a loneliness epidemic in our country. Like it's part of our relationship structures are part of the problem.
And I feel like a lot of what she expressed goes with this theme of people assuming single women, especially, are lonely.
Mm-hmm.
They're choosing
Yeah.
loneliness. She's
Yeah.
not choosing loneliness. She's just choosing not to have a partner.
Right.
Has
Right.
all the people in her life.
Oh,
One thing that I found actually really surprising, and I'm a serial relationship person. I feel like I got into my first relationship when I was in my early 20s, and I've been in relationships ever since. And I would say this point in my life, entering into my 40s, is probably what I would akin most to being single because I do depend on myself more than ever by choice for fulfillment.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to make my own choices. So like it was affirming and also surprising to hear her say things like, I have more money than I've ever had before because everybody assumes that like life becomes cheaper when you pair off with someone. That's not necessarily true.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You're actually like often people who are in relationships have imbalances of resources and
Mhm.
everything costs double because you're doing it for two people. Like,
Hmm. Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting, and I think that I hear what you're saying because I often think about that too. That like, okay, I'm like you, but I've been in two relationships. Like I was in one for 19 years, and then that one ended, and I've now been in one for 10. Like that's 30 years that I've spent like, which that's wild. 29 years that I've spent like in a very intense marriage like or marriage relationship, and I think that and then there has been other lovers and other things that have happened like in between those things, but all within the context of like those two relationships, and I think that I am now, and I mean, this has been part of the journey that like I've been on in the context of like the relationship that I'm in now, thinking about like shifting things from like shifting like relationship dynamic from like codependence to like who do we want to be and how do we support each other like as individual people. Like going back to
Right.
what you were saying about being like feeling more like single even though you're not single at all. Like, I've been feeling some of that too of like how do I want to live my life and how do I want to like think about that and what is it that is important to me and not me as a unit. There are parts of me that are in a unit, but then like what about outside of that? And I don't know. I feel like it's important um to care for yourself in that way too, and your other like friendships or other partners or other things outside of that.
yeah, I would say if I could go back and give my young self any advice,
Mhm.
it would be to find time to be single and
Mhm.
to learn the lessons that I'm learning now about how to like, you're not single because you're sad or you're lonely, you're prioritizing yourself
Yeah.
and your own growth and learning how to make choices based on the things that you want. I think so often, like she said, like you're in a relationship and you feel like this is where you're supposed to be, these are the things you're supposed to be achieving, you're working, to create this unit and to continue to grow together. And it really does often become codependent. And
It's easy for that to happen,
yeah,
actually.
you're making
Hmm.
sacrifices where you don't even need to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was funny. Like, this is such a banal example, but like the other day, PJ gets off work late on Tuesdays and Thursdays and um was not the happiest because the day didn't like go the way that they wanted it to, or were tired, just like the end of a work day, you're tired. I had just been single parenting for the day and was tired, and I had just gotten my son like in his room and he had lied down, and I was like, great, I'm gonna sit down and do my thing. And they're texting me and they're like, do you want to go out? Like, I want to get like something, can like we go do something? And I'm like, there was a past me that was more codependent that would be like, oh, they want to do something. Therefore, I need to pull my kid out of bed, get them dressed, like get myself. I don't want to do this at all. I've just chilled out for the first time all day. And I was like, no, I really don't. I really don't want to go anywhere. And they went out to dinner by themselves, had a beer, came home happier. And I was like, that's so simple, but like, for some reason you get like caught up in like you have to be everything for everybody. And I was like, well, they're in a bad mood, so I need to do something about it. And I'm like, I don't have to do anything about this. This is like, I love them, but this is not my problem right now. I want to chill out. I don't want to watch 90 Day Fiance. So,
Totally fair.
I had never thought of 90 Day Fiance in the way that you referenced it in the episode. And now I'm like, I need to watch more 90 Day Fiance.
how did
Because
I think about it? I like
that it's like akin to sex work. These women are doing sex work. And I don't know why that didn't dawn on me, but I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's what that is.
Yeah, and I loved like one of the things that I love about it, especially when it's like a foreign woman with like an American man, because it's a little bit the gender dynamics are a little bit different, like with the other sorts of pairings, but like so interesting because a lot of them are like very forthright about it, and the men can kind of like get in their feels about it. And I remember one dude who was with like a woman from the Philippines or something was like, uh, you only would you be here if I didn't have the money that I had? And
No,
she's like,
no.
if I didn't,
No.
I do. What are you talking about?
Mhm.
This is
Would you be here if I stopped having sex with you and didn't want to have your children or marry you? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a
But also,
contract.
if it's working, like it's not broken. I appreciate what you have to offer, and
yeah,
you appreciate what I have to offer. You have a nice personality, and we have a good time, but also you have resources that I need. Why is that wrong?
right. How about
Everything is transactional. I think that we all just like somewhere along the line we fell so in love with the romance
Mhm.
of, oh no, no, no. You first. Oh, I don't really mean it. Oh no, I mean if you want to, that we like forgot that everything is transactional. Like
Oh, we love to
we
ignore reality
don't,
as human beings, like the obvious.
yeah,
I mean, even her talking about how she had a conversation with her fiance about being poly, and he said no and went and did what poly people would do in an
right.
honest and open manner behind her back.
right.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, what the,
Yeah.
like, come on. It just had to be shitty?
Mhm.
That's how it had to be for you? Well, that's a shitty kink, and you should work that out with someone else. A
Just, I
lot of
mean,
people
like
have
it.
shitty kinks.
Yeah, it also, I mean, like some people do just lie because they like to lie, but I feel like it has to do with that theme of like you grow up a certain way, you're told to be a certain way, and so even though you want to experience something, or maybe like you feel like you could be more dynamic and love more people, you fall into those rhetorics and those scripts, and you end up going about it a completely different way. And I like that she is like, my singleness is an act of like self-actualization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing, I was just thinking about another episode that we just recently put out with Dominique Riston, and
Mhm.
Milk, you might not have heard this, but one of the things that she was talking about is the way that like sex work changes in a lot, in some ways, like your relationship to like dating and everything. And what Dominique said in terms of what you're saying, Em, about like everything being transactional, she's like, it makes you step back and say, like, what do I want out of this? And she said, and it made me laugh when she said that, she's like, actually, your payment sucks. So
Yeah, that's a good way to put that, you know?
what you're giving me, it's not working for me.
We don't accept that card here.
Yeah.
This wasn't my mom, it was someone else's mom, someone I went to high school with. I'll remember it and remember to tell her she was awesome. But she was like, honey, they work for you. They work for you, baby. And like I was heartbroken over something. And that was a really
Hmm.
interesting idea to have presented to me in high school. It's like, wait, what? Like, And then when I was, I didn't really date in high school at all. And then when I, after high school and I dated people, I was like, oh, right. This is transactional. I am giving you something to be here. We are working together, sure, at best, but like, yeah, if we're not working together, you're working for me. Yeah, okay, got it. It was a real
Thing else about the like that stuck with me that wasn't that message, but it was in a similar vein to what we're talking about with 90 Day Fiance. I remember one time my mom said, when you look at a woman who's married for money, she's earned every penny. And I was like, that's
yes.
she's
Yeah.
looking for that. It's not like,
It didn't just happen. I think we talked about this last week. Like it didn't just show up. Okay.
I think she
Everything
like
was negotiated.
don't feel like these women have like an easy ride because they married rich or whatever. They like that's their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've also made sacrifices
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
type of relationship that they choose to have.
Right, right.
Exactly. Like everyone does. I mean, every relationship has those.
Mhm.
But yeah, that people tend to look at, especially poor women married to rich men, as this easy thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing easy about that.
Mm-mm.
I'm sorry. Like, that's a whole job.
Stop. That's what my mom was saying. She earned
Yeah,
you know,
that's so cute.
so yeah, and neither my mom nor I ever married for money. So like, but not that we know anything about that, but
But we know that it's work.
I do think that it's work. And I would rather more evenly distribute the work rather than like I like being a sex worker better than that because, there's less responsibility associated with that. I'd rather have,
I like being poly for that reason, right? It's like, well, if I'm not doing it for you, please find it out there. You're like, big
Yeah.
world. I'll even help. Be a wingman.
I can't imagine meeting someone through sex work, ending up in a relationship with them, and then like I also completely agree with her that it wouldn't be how you want to talk to somebody else, that's fine. But like this it also would have been the thing for me that he was like making fun of
Harold.
what she does when that's how they met.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hypocrisy. And I've heard a lot of sex workers tell that story. Like I don't even know if I should tell this on the podcast because I find it embarrassing, but whatever, I'm being vulnerable. So I one time dated a client, lasted 2 dates because we like transitioned the relationship like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we like dated? And
Right.
it turns out that it was better when he was a client. And oh, actually, anyways, whatever. So, and my sex worker friend, we were out one time and I was like, yeah, this relationship just ended, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, how did you meet him? And I was like, I don't even want to tell you. And she's like, why? She thought I did something nefarious. I'm like, no, I don't want to tell you because I'm embarrassed because I broke a rule like in the hooker handbook. So and I dated a client and it didn't go well. Surprise, surprise. And she's like, don't be embarrassed. We've all done it. It's happened. We do it once. And then we realize why we don't do that. You know, not because there's anything wrong with clients. And I want to be clear about that. I'm not saying there's something wrong with clients. I'm saying that transitioning that relationship from like one thing to a totally different thing is actually a really difficult thing to do. Like it,
Yeah,
yeah. And so like I even think that the person that like it didn't work out with is probably a cool guy. Like the reason that I decided to even date him in the first place is because we had a good thing going. It wasn't
right.
in a different context though, and so, the whole point of what I'm saying is that like that's a common story. And I think it's sad that it's a common story. And I think it's very easy to exceptionalize yourself like, oh, this is going to be different. Like we
Right.
have something different. And then, but the thing that's so hard about her story is that the very thing that brought them together is the thing that he used against her. And that's so like hypocritical. And I don't
It's just the fucking audacity of people.
know.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
married a stripper so that I could turn her into a Hamptons housewife. Like, well, that's strange. Aren't there women in the Hamptons? Like, aren't there women who are already raised to do this? What did you do to them? Like,
And it
Right.
does like it leads me into the question of was this was this like a default setting for him or is it a power thing?
right,
It feels like it's always I've been with someone who met me and was attracted to me because I am a certain type of way. And then like when our relationship eventually devolved, he like openly admitted that the reason why he didn't want me to dress the way that I dressed when he met me, didn't want me to get any more tattoos, was not because he wasn't attracted to those things, but it was because of power,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like I felt a sense of like her taking back her own power by being like, no, I'm
hmm,
purposefully going to call myself single. Like I, other people
yeah,
might see what I do and refer to me as solo poly, like, but there's power in the word single because people stigmatize it, and it that mean
right,
that word doesn't mean what you think it means. Like for me,
Well, what I really like,
yeah,
she said, is that the fear about becoming single was that she wasn't going to have love in her life. And then this, like, taking back the power also included recognizing that there is love, that there's not only one way to love, that there's like other ways of loving. And that I think was the most like powerful part of the story to
yeah,
me.
and it sounds like the love that she has in her life now is a lot more supportive and a lot less transactional.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm now like, I suddenly
No, I mean,
like, yeah, we were just talking about how relationships are transactional, but then we were like, but they also could be different. Like I'm also like
right.
things of like there's different types of relationships.
Yeah, it's
I
like
mean,
I mean transact it is I feel like we're referring to things as being transactional, and I do think relationships are transactional, but the same word could be
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
you can use the word boundaries. Like I have certain boundaries and certain requirements in the like care of myself that like you could be a part of these things and it would help me be a happier person, and I would prefer somebody who wants to be a part of those things.
Hmm.
Like yes, that is transactional, but it's also just a healthy boundary.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to say because I'm feeling like overcome by emotions that I love having you two as my friends, and I feel like that there's a way that we
same.
that there's like a way that like I like being in the world where like we do share like projects and like lives overlap, but they come together and then move apart and come together and move apart. And there's something that like I really find meaningful about that of like, how can we all support each other through this life that isn't, um, that isn't demanding, but I say both because I'm thinking of like Emily and I and Milk and I, but like, all in all these different like kind of configurations where like I feel like I like being able to like enter into relationships that have different sort of dynamics that are mutually supportive, I guess is the way that I want to say that. And I think you guys are good friends. So,
Yeah. I think that there are relationships in which the transaction is a natural one.
mhm.
And that when, for me, acknowledging that all of my relationships were transactional allowed me to enter into relationships where that transaction was natural and easy,
Yeah.
where my nature was exchanged for their nature
Yeah.
instead of the transactional relationships that tend to be on the more toxic or negative side, where it sort of seems to be between roles. I'm always on this person versus roles thing, but like, my wife needs to be, and like, and if you don't do that, then I'm withholding
Right.
money, well, my husband needs to be, and if you don't do that, I'm withholding sex. And since we're the only person for each other, and we've like got this death grip thing going on, like, I want to be clear, I don't feel like every monogamous relationship is like that. We're specifically talking about toxic ones, but like, it doesn't stop being transactional when it's easy and natural and correct, like, for want of a better word, when it's like righteous, like when all of my boundaries are respected and how I naturally want to give is received with all of its value. And
It's like
it's
going back to
just
Monique was saying, like, your payment sucks. What I want to say to you two is
right.
payments don't suck.
Your payments are perfect. Yes. Not
I
only do I
agree.
enjoy the way that you pay me, I look for more opportunities for us to exchange shit. Yes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
when I say how I'm like living my life as I go into my 40s, all of the relationships that I have now are of that nature, where it's like everything is naturally transactional. We feed each other, we move in and out of spaces where we're lifting one another up. There's not like a constant one person needs more than the other person needs. We have like our own individual lives. And I feel like it's funny where the word transactional becomes a bad word is when you're over analyzing and looking too hard at the situation. You're like, oh, well, are you only here because of my money? Like, it's when you start to ask a question like that that it's like becomes a bad word and a bad thing. It's like, are you unhappy with something that I'm doing? Why don't we talk about that?
Right.
Right.
Are
Right.
you feeling unfulfilled in some type of way that's making this feel transactional to you? Because
Yeah.
Is Has my payment begun to suck? Are you reluctant to give your payment? Is something changed in that? Because this used to be really easy. Yeah.
Interesting. Like I've had those because it's so much more explicit in sex work. I think it's easy to like for clients to say something like I feel like you wouldn't be here if I wasn't paying you. And what I always like think when that happens, when people start to get into their feels and be like, I would want to be here anyways, and she's only here because I'm paying her. Like the thing about that is like, yeah, that's actually true, but that's not true because I don't like you. It's true because if
Yes.
I'm not doing that, I would have to be at a 9 to 5, and I don't
Right.
couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't do it. So like the
Would
fact,
you want to be in that room if I was reacting to you the way that I would if I had just worked a 9 to 5 and you and me as people, with you not paying me, was here?
yeah,
Because she doesn't want to have sex with you.
it would.
She has no interest in that. So take that off the table. Do you actually want to sit in this room and listen to me complain while you rub my feet and make me kneel? Because that's kind of what that woman wants. Like,
not to me, it's interesting because it's not negative at all. The fact that like somebody
mm-mm.
payment doesn't mean that I like them less. It actually means that like I feel more supported in this like relationship
They value your time.
and can come as like I'm here to be with you. If you weren't paying me for that, I would have to go get a job and then I couldn't do it.
I couldn't provide this kind of attention and intimacy and presence
Yeah.
unless that was taken care of. And since you've taken care of it, I can be that for you.
Right.
That's how that works.
Uh,
No, there
so,
is
yeah,
something that happens where people forget that
yeah,
other part, especially when money comes into it. Would
yeah.
you be here if it wasn't for money? I would be. It's like, would you be here if I wasn't interested in you and was exhausted and was demanding things of you? Because that's what you're saying if you're removing your money from the situation, because that's a different person.
I,
I'm not bright and happy when you get off of work with a clean house, excited to see you. I'm not that at all.
yeah.
Like, and that,
And
yeah,
I be like, I guess it's, I think I just like, if there are like clients who are listening to this, which I know there always are, but like, I think that it's important to say that like the idea that a relationship is transactional doesn't mean that it's not genuine. And I think that like all kinds of relationships, not just sex work relationships. The only reason I said this about sex work is because that's so obvious. It's like there will be this much time for this much money, but like this happens in all relationships in more subtle
yeah,
ways. And like it doesn't mean that it's not genuine or that you don't want to be there. I mean, in a couple of after parties ago, Milk and I were talking about doing a duo together, and that client, I always want to see, like, I genuinely like him as a person, I wouldn't fly to the city that he lives in to go see him if he wasn't my client, though, and not because I don't want to, but because I have a lot of responsibilities. Like,
I
and
just can't afford it is part of it too.
I can't,
And if you didn't have that income coming in from him, you would have to make that up somewhere else. You'd be busy.
I wouldn't,
Like,
and it's not because I don't like him. It's because I would be busy and I wouldn't be able to create space for it. So like, I think it's important um, to put into context, like what it means to, I don't know. I think the upshot that I'm getting out of this conversation, which is much deeper than I was expecting to like, but is that, it's okay to expect things out of relationships, be it whatever the,
yeah,
and that different kinds of relationships require different kinds of payments. And
yeah.
that's fine.
And like, find the person for whom that payment's easy, even when you're really irritated.
Yeah. Hmm.
If you're gonna, especially if you're gonna have like a person,
Yeah.
make sure that payment's easy. Make sure their payment doesn't suck too.
Yeah. But what I like about what Jem is talking about is that like it doesn't have to be a person too.
Yeah,
There are a lot.
exactly.
You could have your needs met in like your platonic relationships with other friends. She even talked about how like sex working friends are also friends that you have sex with sometimes.
Right.
That's fine too. Yeah.
That's fine too.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's all kinds of, yeah. It was very rich, I think, to think about what our relationships are for, which I think is part of what came out of the conversation.
I agree.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a
I
good.
think that's a great place. Yeah.
So thank you for listening back and listen to Gem DeMilo and tell your friends you love them. That's what I got.
100%.
Always.
I'm Emily
Goodbye.
Foster. Like, subscribe, share, comment, do all the stuff. And also tell your friends you love them.
And I'm Milk Glass, and I love you.
Love you too.